gracious good day to one and all once again. 'Tis I, Norton the First, by grace of God, Emperor of the United States and Protector of Mexico. Back with you all once again for episode number 151. of Emperor Norton's fantastic history vlog and now podcast. We'll talk about that in a moment. It is October 8, 2020. This is our 206th day living under COVID-19 restrictions. Well, let's talk a little bit about the podcast. We just launched it yesterday. And if you're looking for it, it's now on Spotify and numerous other platforms. We're going to be on Apple Podcasts very soon. It's called Emperor Norton's Fantastic History Podcast. It's basically the audio version of this vlog, and that's how it's going to be proceeding. We may do a podcast only at some point, and later on today or tomorrow, we will be posting an introduction podcast because we realized we put this up there yesterday, 2 episodes with no explanation whatsoever as to, well, who we are and the meaning of this vlog/podcast. So we'll be doing a podcast only segment at some point in the next couple of days to explain all of that to you. And we appreciate all of our new podcast listeners. We're hoping it will increase our audience. So thanks for tuning in, or whatever one does with a podcast. Not sure. Well, let's begin with our national days. It is National Pierogi Day. That sounds good. World Octopus Day. Oh, they're such intelligent creatures, it almost makes me sorry to eat them. Almost. It's Touch Tag Day, not it. And World Sight Day, very important. So get your eyes checked. Don't want to lose your sight now, do you? Well, for our Florida man story today, Florida man sets up fake office to steal people's identities and urine. I never want to explain those. I just like reading them as they are. For our San Francisco story today, we actually have 2, but the second one's coming as part of our overall history days. But the first one, as usual, we are relying on John Ralston's wonderful tome, This Date in San Francisco, as our source material. Because on October 8, 1933, the Coit Tower is dedicated. Probably the most iconic building in San Francisco, arguably. Some would say the pyramid, but I like to think Coit Tower. Well, let's get on with the story. One of San Francisco's most recognizable landmarks, Coit Tower, is the longest lasting structure to be built on Telegraph Hill, which got its name from the signal station erected in 1853 that notified the city of ships entering the Golden Gate. A temporary observatory was placed on top of the hill in 1870, and in 1890 a weather station was erected. Coit Tower was built at the cost of $125,000, bequeathed by Mrs. Elizabeth Lilly Reich Hitchcock Coit. That's a mouthful. Lilly Coit was a typically eccentric San Francisco character. This is true. Daughter of United States Army surgeon Dr. Charles Hitchcock, Lilly had come to San Francisco with her parents in 1851, about the time that San Francisco was suffering the latest of a series of devastating fires. According to legend, Lilly was on her way home from school when she saw an engine of Knickerbocker Company No. 5 struggling up a hill to a fire. Dropping her school books, she grabbed the tow rope and helped the men pull. Lilly had a thing for firemen. She became Engine Company No. 5's mascot and was elected an honorary member of the company in 1863. She invariably wore a No. 5 badge and as a teenager followed the company to every fire it fought. In 1868, Lilly married Benjamin Howard Coit, a mine owner and caller of the San Francisco Stock Board. The two were incompatible and separated later but never divorced. And Lilly inherited a large fortune from her father and husband when both died in 1885. A shooting affair by a deranged Confederate veteran in her San Francisco apartment led to her leaving San Francisco for Europe. She did not return until 1924 and died in 1929, leaving the city 1/3 of her estate, quote, to expend the same in an appropriate manner for the purpose of adding beauty to said city, which I have always loved." Unquote. After some debate, it was decided to erect a monument to San Francisco firemen. Architect Henry Howard of the firm Blackwell and Brown, architects of City Hall, designed the tower. Howard's design supposedly suggests a fire hose nozzle, but the resemblance, if any, is coincidental. That's a big misconception. Speakers at the dedication ceremony included Mayor Rossi, Park Commission President Herbert Fleischacker, and Supervisor James McSheehy. Several bands and singing societies were performed, and a special loudspeaker system transmitted the ceremonies to Washington Square in North Beach. The Chronicle called the tower a fitting memorial to a little girl who, with pigtails flying, chased fire engines up and down the city's hills. So yes, there is a popular misconception that it's supposed to resemble the nozzle of a fire hose. That was a good way to anger the architect. He never meant it that way. The confusion is, and I think maybe even the book got it wrong, is that I have never found anything that says it's a memorial to the firefighter. The confusion is because she left a separate bequest to build a monument to the firefighters. It's in Washington Square Park in North Beach. So there you go. There's a picture of it. Let's move on with our other history today. Brush the microphone there, sorry. Because it was in the year 1600 that San Marino adopts a constitution. 1600, that's a long time ago. Now, San Marino is the third smallest nation, behind number 1, Vatican City, number 2, Monaco. Our other San Francisco story today, 1865, an earthquake in the Santa Cruz Mountains along the San Andreas Fault shakes San Francisco. Now, here's a picture done by Edward Jump, a lithograph actually called Earthquakey Times, that shows that Edward Jump was also the producer of the Three Bummers that associates me with Bummer and Lazarus. But we'll get to that in another episode. The earthquake was 6.3 and generated on the San Andreas Fault in Santa Cruz County. Considerable damage was done in the San Francisco Bay Area. The shock occurred at 1:15 p.m., frightening almost the entire population from their houses into the streets. During half a minute, there were 2 tremendous shocks which caused buildings to rock to and fro in a manner altogether alarming. It was on Sunday and services were just over in the churches. The congregation of the Unitarian Church was being dismissed when the shock commenced, and the excitement among the women and children threatened serious consequences. The rush from the Catholic Church on Vallejo Street was so great that the doors to the main entrance were carried away and several persons were injured by being trampled upon. The walls of many buildings were cracked in several places, and more or less plastering fell from perhaps half the ceilings in the city. The cornices and firewalls fell from many buildings. It was not the deadliest and largest fire in San Francisco that was caused by it. Oh, wait, I'm sorry, that's a whole other story. Never mind. However, that is the forgotten San Francisco earthquake. Everyone knows about 1906. A lot of people know about 1989, but hardly anyone knows about the 1865 earthquake. It was a big one. So, it was also on this date in 1871 that the Great Fire of Chicago kills 200 people and destroys 4 square miles, 10 square kilometers of buildings, and the original Emancipation Proclamation, which was there. Now, a lot of people think that that was the largest urban fire in the history of the United States. That's not true. It was the San Francisco Fire of 1906. It's said that you could fit the Chicago, Boston, and I believe Philadelphia fires. I couldn't find that this morning when I was looking for it. Their areas within the area of the fire zone in San Francisco. So it was a huge fire in Chicago, but not the largest in the United States. 1918, American soldier Alvin York single-handedly attacks a German gun nest, killing at least 25 and capturing 132 Germans single-handedly. 1934, Bruno Hauptmann is indicted for the murder of Charles Lindbergh's son. He was later convicted of that. 1941, building at the concentration camp Birkenau begins. 1945, the microwave oven is patented. 1967, Guerrilla leader Che Guevara and his men are captured in Bolivia. Guevara is executed the next day. 1970, Soviet author Alexander Solzhenitsyn wins the Nobel Prize for Literature. 1998, the U.S. House of Representatives votes to begin impeachment hearings against President Bill Clinton on charges of lying about his affair with Monica Lewinsky. How quaint. 2017, wildfires ignite in Northern California wine country, killing at least 41 over the next week, with 20,000 evacuated. People are now starting to come home from the last big fires up there. We just got word that friends of ours are returning to their Santa Rosa homes yesterday. So that's good, but terrible, terrible fires still going on. 2018, on a related note, major climate report by Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change for the United Nations says planet will warm 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit, 1.5 degrees Celsius, by 2040 with dire results. Well, we're already seeing those dire results, aren't we? Yes. Our births today. Let's begin. In 1890, with the American aviator, the ace of aces in World War I, Eddie Rickenbacker. 1920, Frank Patrick Herbert, American sci-fi author of the novel Dune. 1936, American gossip columnist Rona Barrett, Miss Rona. Some of you from Los Angeles might remember her in particular. I believe she was on KHJ Channel 9 back then, but she did achieve national stature on The Tomorrow Show with Tom Snyder, who also got started in Los Angeles. Let's see, 1939, Harvey Pekar, American comic book writer, American Splendor, was his series. He didn't draw them. He worked with numerous artists, including the legendary R. Crumb, but he wrote the comics. 1939, Australian actor, Mr. Crocodile Dundee himself, Paul Hogan. 1941, Reverend Jesse Jackson, American clergyman and Democratic presidential candidate in 1984 and 1988. 1943, R.L. Stine, American children's book writer. He's the author of Goosebumps, Ermagerd, Goosebumps. I know that's like really out of date, but it's still one of my favorite memes, you know. Ermagerd. 1943, comedian, actor, Chevy Chase, notorious jerk, but we won't go there. Hope you're not listening, Chevy. Just learn to be a little nicer, okay? And 1951, Johnny Ramone, the guitarist for the Ramones. The Ramones are all gone. Wow. I think a couple of the other drummers are still around, but the original group, all gone. Well, let's move on to our deaths today. Starting in 1793 with John Hancock, American merchant and statesman who was the first to sign the Declaration of Independence and left no room for anybody else to sign. 1869, 14th U.S. President Franklin Pierce. 1985, Leon Klinghoffer, American, murdered by hijackers of the Achille Lauro when they threw him off the boat. He was 69 years old. I know, a really awful joke that I'm not going to tell. And in 2015, legendary Cajun chef Paul Prudhomme, also restaurant owner K-Paul's in New Orleans. Well, let's end with our quote for today. About our architecture here in San Francisco. San Francisco is the only city I can think of that can survive all the things you people are doing to it and still look beautiful. And that's from Frank Lloyd Wright. He only has one building in the city, and that is on Maiden Lane. So check that out sometime. It's one of the highlights of the tour. So that wraps it up for today. Now don't forget, we accept gratuities, so here's the information for that. For those of you on the podcast, you can either do a monthly subscription through Venmo. Also, there are links, and we'll put it in the podcast description, for our PayPal and, not monthly subscription through Venmo. That I did that again. That is via Patreon. The one-time donations can be made via PayPal and Venmo. I believe there's also a donate button on the podcast itself that was placed there by Anchor. We're loving the app. I'm pretty new with it, but so far so good. Good app for if you want to do a podcast. Also, if you would like more information about the tours that the Countess and I normally do, we will be returning to touring. Hopefully, it's looking like November now. We're going to take a week off at the end of October and then return in November with our once weekly format, probably on Wednesdays, continuing with the weekend special with the Countess on Saturdays. That'll be the format from then out for a while. We'll see how that goes. If people like it, we'll continue doing it that way. Leave your comments below. Hardly anyone comments. To be honest, the only comments we seem to get are from people trying to sell nude photos. Stop it. I delete them. Don't bother, okay? Thank you. I don't know if any of you are listening, but who are doing that, but please, stop it. So until we see you again, stay safe, stay inside, and therefore stay healthy. But you can go outside, but if you do, follow the guidelines, social distance. Please wear a mask no matter what anybody is saying. These people don't know what they're talking about. For some reason, I guess they want you dead. So don't take any chances with this. Be afraid of it. Take the precautions. We're just astounded at the words coming out of Washington these days, but we always have been. Don't take unproven cures that might just kill you. Until we see you again. Oh, one more thing I forgot. Be kind to one another. So many of our problems would be solved if we were just kinder to one another, wouldn't they? So until we see you again, a gracious good day.